The girl was standing beneath the dead fluorescent light outside the shower block when she asked me where her caravan had gone. Rain ran off the hood of her yellow coat. Her bare feet were planted in a puddle that should have been freezing. Behind her was Site 17. Empty grass, a rusted tap, a broken concrete slab. I told her there had never been a caravan there. She looked past me towards the dark windows of my grandmother's house and said, "Then why is Maggie still keeping the door locked?" It was the summer of 1998, and I was 15 years old when Mum sent me down to Banksia Dunes Holiday Park for 6 weeks. She called it a holiday. I knew better. Mum was working double shifts at a chemist in Western Sydney, and I had become one more thing she had to organize. Gran had room for me. She needed help around the park, and I was old enough not to complain too loudly. Banksia Dunes sat on a quiet road outside Jarvis Bay, hidden behind tall gums and a faded blue sign with peeling white letters. It had 12 caravans, 8 powered sites, a tiny kiosk, and an old amenities block that had been closed since before I was born. The park smelled of hot bitumen, damp towels, sunscreen, and frying onions. In the afternoon, cicadas screamed from the bushland. At night, televisions flickered blue behind caravan curtains, while ceiling fans knocked slowly overhead. Gran lived in a weatherboard house near the entrance. She wore floral blouses, kept biscuits in an old Arnott's tin, and carried a huge ring of brass keys everywhere she went. I spent my days emptying bins, checking taps, sweeping sand from the laundry, and riding Gran's rusty bicycle down to the servo for milk and newspapers. At night, I listened to cassette tapes on my Walkman and watched moths throw themselves against the veranda light. The closed amenities block sat at the far end of the park, half hidden behind a row of bottle brush trees. It was a low brick building with boarded windows and a corrugated roof stained dark by years of rain. Gran had one rule. "Don't go near the old block after dark," she told me on my first evening. I laughed because I thought she was trying to make the place sound interesting. She did not laugh back. The first storm came 3 days later. All afternoon, the heat had been awful. The air felt thick enough to chew. Even the birds had gone quiet. After dinner, clouds rolled in from the sea. Lightning flashed over the gum trees, turning the caravans white for half a second at a time. Most of the guests shut themselves indoors. Gran sent me out with a torch to check whether the laundry windows were closed. As I passed the old amenities block, I heard a child humming. It was soft at first, almost lost beneath the rain. Then I saw the yellow raincoat. The girl stood under the broken awning, facing the locked door. She looked about 10. Her wet hair hung against her cheeks. She had no shoes. "Are you all right?" I asked. She turned slowly. "Can you help me find our caravan?" she said. I looked beyond her. Site 17 was a patch of long grass beside the bush fence. "What number was it?" 17, she said. I pointed at the empty site. "That's there." Her face changed. Not angry, worse than angry. Confused. "No," she whispered. "That's where it was." Then thunder cracked so loudly that I flinched. When I looked back, she was gone. I told Gran what I had seen. The mug slipped from her hand and smashed on the kitchen tiles. For a long time, she stared at the pieces. Then she said, "You must have seen one of the campers' children. There aren't any children staying here." Gran looked at me. "Then don't go back there." The following morning, I went to Site 17 in full daylight. The grass was wet from the storm. A narrow strip of concrete ran beneath it, like the remains of an old caravan annex. Near the rusted tap, I found a small plastic hair clip shaped like a blue butterfly. It was cracked and yellowed with age. Danny Price saw me crouched there and wandered over from the kiosk. He worked for Gran during school holidays. His family lived up the road in a brick house opposite the Oval. Danny knew everything about the area, or at least he acted like he did. When I showed him the hair clip, his smile disappeared. "Put it back," he said. "Why?" "My dad told me about that site." He glanced towards the old shower block. "Little girl went missing here in the 70s. Storm night. They searched the bush, the beach, the roads. Never found her." I asked her name. Danny shrugged. "Doyle, maybe? Lucy Doyle." That name sat in my head all day. That evening I found Gran in the office, sorting old booking cards beneath a flickering fluorescent tube. I asked her about Lucy Doyle. She stopped moving. Then she opened a drawer, took out a yellowed newspaper clipping, and pushed it across the desk. The headline read, "Child Missing from South Coast Holiday Park." There was a grainy photo underneath. A little girl with light brown hair stood beside a caravan, smiling at someone outside the frame. She wore a yellow raincoat. Gran snatched the clipping back. "You should not have gone through my things," she said. "I didn't." Her face softened, but only slightly. "Lucy was my sister," she said. Then she locked the drawer. After that, I tried to stay away from Site 17. I really did. But every night it rained, I heard the humming. Sometimes it came from beyond the caravan sites, sometimes from the old block. Once, just before midnight, it came from directly outside my bedroom window. I lay frozen beneath the sheet, listening. The humming stopped. Then, a small, wet hand tapped twice against the glass. I did not look until morning. There were muddy footprints on the veranda boards. Bare footprints. They began under my window and led away through the yard towards the locked amenities block. Gran saw them before I could wash them away. She stood on the veranda in her cardigan, clutching her keys so tightly they pressed into her palm. "I told you to leave it alone," she said. "You know she's here." Gran looked suddenly older than I had ever seen her. "She doesn't know where she is," she whispered. "What happened to her?" Gran shook her head. "I was meant to be watching her." That afternoon, rain began again. Danny came over with a torch and a battered cassette recorder. He had stolen it from his older brother's room because he wanted proof that I was not making things up. We waited near the kiosk until the park went dark. At 11:30, the humming started. Danny stopped joking. We followed it through the wet grass to the old amenities block. The door was still locked, but water was pouring from beneath it, as if the building had flooded inside. Then a voice spoke from the other side. "Margaret?" It was a girl's voice. Danny stepped back. I pressed my face to a crack between the boards covering the window. Inside, the corridor was dry. At the far end stood Lucy in her yellow raincoat. Behind her was something impossible. A caravan. Old white aluminum, orange stripe down the side. Canvas annex flapping in a wind that could not have been inside that building. Lucy turned towards me. "Tell Maggie I found the door," she said. Then the caravan door opened by itself. Gran finally told me the truth the next morning. In 1976, when Gran was 16, she and Lucy had stayed at Banksia Dunes with their parents. The park had belonged to Gran's uncle then. Lucy had been frightened of storms. On the night she disappeared, their parents went to the pub in town and told Gran to keep an eye on her little sister. But Gran had wanted to meet a boy from another caravan. She left Lucy asleep in the annex at Site 17. The storm came early. A flash flood tore through the lower end of the park. Water rushed across the sites and lifted the Doyle caravan from its blocks. When Gran returned, the caravan was gone. The police found debris in the bush, They found a torn piece of yellow raincoat caught on a fence. They never found Lucy. "What does the shower block have to do with it?" I asked. Gran looked at the old building through the kitchen window. "Your great-uncle built it over the drainage channel," she said, "after the flood." She had heard something years later while cleaning the old block alone. A child knocking beneath the floor. "But I was too scared to tell anyone," she said. "And then enough time passed that I convinced myself I'd imagined it." I thought about the wet handprint on my bedroom window, about Lucy saying she had found the door. "She isn't trying to scare us," I said. Gran closed her eyes. "No," she said. "She wants someone to let her out." That night, the worst storm of the summer came in from the sea. The power failed just after 10. The holiday park vanished into darkness. Wind bent the gums until their branches scraped across caravan roofs. Guests shouted behind closed doors. Somewhere, a dog barked until it went silent. Gran took her keys and headed for the old amenities block. I followed her. Danny followed me. By the time we reached Site 17, water was rushing over the grass. It curled around our ankles, brown and full of leaves. The old block door stood open. Gran had never opened it. Inside, the corridor was filled with cold blue light. Lucy stood at the far end, raincoat dripping onto dry tiles. "Here," she said. The floor beneath her was cracked. A metal drain cover sat in the middle of the corridor, buried beneath layers of dirt and old leaves. Gran dropped to her knees and began clawing at it. Danny and I helped. The cover was heavy, rusted into place. Wind screamed through the open doorway, though the air inside the building felt dead still. Then I heard knocking. 3 slow knocks beneath the metal. Lucy looked at Gran. "Maggie," she said, "you promised." Gran began to cry. Not loudly, just one broken sound after another as she pulled at the cover. The 3 of us lifted it together. Underneath was a narrow stormwater channel, and trapped against the far wall was a small white shoe. Beside it lay a faded yellow scrap of plastic, the raincoat. The water began rising fast. The corridor lights burst on overhead, buzzing and flickering. For 1 second, I saw the old caravan reflected in every puddle around us. Lucy stood beside it, dry now, her hair neat, her face calm. Gran reached for her. Lucy stepped backwards. The caravan door opened. Then the power surged. The lights went out, and Lucy was gone. The police came the next day. They found the shoe, fragments of a child's raincoat, and bones lodged deep in the old channel beneath the amenities block. The floodwater had carried Lucy through a broken drain and trapped her where no one had thought to look. Gran gave a statement that took most of the afternoon. She told them everything. Not the part about seeing Lucy in the corridor, not the knocking, not the caravan appearing inside the building. Just the facts she had carried for 22 years. Banksia Dunes closed for the rest of the season. A few months later, Gran sold it to a developer from Nowra. The old amenities block was demolished. Site 17 was paved over. Mum collected me before school started again. On the drive back to Sydney, Gran sat in the back seat beside me, holding my hand. For the first time, she looked relieved. I thought it was over. For years, I believed it was. Then, in 2006, Gran died. While helping Mum clear out her house, I found an old cassette tape inside the same drawer where she had kept Lucy's newspaper clipping. Written on the label, in Gran's handwriting, were 4 words. Storm night. Do not play. I played it anyway. At first, there was only rain and static. Then Danny's frightened breathing. Then my own voice, much younger, sang, "Lucy, where are you?" A girl answered, but it was not Lucy. It was Gran, and she was crying beneath the sound of the storm. "Elliot," she whispered, "don't open the door."